the forbidden mask for many years. There was a legend in the deep space outpost called Miraxis 9. It was about a healer and alien woman who wore a smooth, dark mask. No one knew what she looked like underneath. Some said her face was burned in a war. Others believed she was cursed by her own people. But one thing was clear: no one was ever allowed to remove her mask. Not even the high commanders or alien royals. Those who tried were punished. Some even disappeared. They called her Zeri. She never spoke. She only healed. From poisoned lungs to shattered bones, her hands worked miracles. People came from many planets, waiting in long lines just to be touched by her glowing fingers. She saved lives, but never thanked anyone and never let anyone get close. Her room was quiet, cold, and guarded. She was the mystery no one dared to solve. Then one day, a human was brought in. His name was Jack. He had been caught in an explosion during a supply run. His body was broken ribs crushed, bleeding inside, lungs filling with liquid. The medics had given up. But his alien friend begged them to take him to Zeri. The guards hesitated. Humans were not always welcome here. But the rules were changing. And besides, Zeri never refused a dying one. They carried Jack into the healer's chamber. He was barely conscious, but his eyes were open. He saw her standing by the table, silent and still like a statue. The mask covered her whole face from forehead to chin. Her long dark robes flowed to the floor. Light glowed from her hands as she moved toward him. Jack didn't feel fear. He felt calmed out as Zeri placed her hands on his chest. A strange warmth entered his body. His pain faded. He could breathe again. Bones began to shift, heal, and settle into place. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of her power. Then something strange happened. Zeri paused. She looked at him longer than usual. Her hands rested gently on his skin. Jack whispered, "Thank you." And then, without warning, he lifted his hand and reached for her mask. Gasps filled the room. The guards outside heard alarms going off. No one had ever touched her like this before. But Zeri didn't move. She didn't stop him. Jack's fingers touched the edge of her mask. It was cold and smooth. His hand shook, but something inside him told him it was right. Slowly, carefully, he lifted the mask from her face, and then the room went silent. Beneath the mask was a face no one had ever seen. Her skin was pale with a soft silver glow. Her eyes were large, deep purple, and filled with something between sadness and peace. There were markings on her cheeks, thin, glowing lines that pulsed like veins of light. She looked nothing like the monster others had imagined. Jack stared at her, and she stared back. "Why? Do you hide?" he asked. Her lips parted, and she spoke. Her voice was soft like a breeze, because the truth frightens them. "Just." Then guards rushed in, weapons ready. They stopped in shock when they saw her face. One of them shouted, "Put the mask back. You broke the law." But Zeri raised her hand. "No," she said, her voice clear. "This human has done what no one dared. He saw me and did not turn away." Jack sat up, still weak but alert. He looked around at the frightened faces. "She saved my life," he said, "and she deserves to live hers without hiding." The head medic tried to protest, but Zeri turned to him. "I choose who sees me," she said, "and I have chosen." That day, something changed on Miraxis 9. Word spread fast someone had removed the healer's mask and lived. And not just lived, he had touched her soul. Some aliens were angry, others were curious. But one thing was sure, the mask was no longer a wall. It had become a symbol of a new beginning. And Jack? He didn't know why he had done it. Maybe it was the pain. Maybe it was the calm he felt. Or maybe it was something deeper. Something unspoken between two beings from different worlds. But one thing he knew. Her face would never leave his memory. And for the first time in her life, Zeri didn't put the mask back on. Not that day, not ever again. The human who Darajeri didn't speak for a long time after the mask came off. She sat in her quiet chamber, her glowing face now bare, her fingers trembling slightly. She had broken the most sacred rule of her kind, but strangely, she felt no fear. Only a strange warmth, and a name echoing in her mind, Jack, resting on a medical bed nearby, watching her with calm, curious eyes. He had been given permission to stay, though barely. The guards outside watched him like hawks. Whispers ran through the station. Like wildfire, the human touched her. He saw her face. Why wasn't he punished? But Zeri had spoken. She had chosen. And now, everything had changed. Jack didn't understand the weight of what he had done. To him, it wasn't about breaking rules. It was about seeing the one who saved him. He had always believed that truth should never be hidden behind fear. He thought maybe the mask was there to protect her. But now he understood it was to protect them. The galaxy wasn't ready to see someone like Zeri, but Jack was. Why me? He asked quietly. Zeri turned to him slowly. Because you didn't see a healer or a monster. You saw me. Jack nodded. He remembered the exact moment her eyes had met his. They were not cold or distant. They were tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of healing others while carrying her own silent wounds. Zeri spoke again. Her voice was a whisper, but it reached deep into Jack's heart. Long ago, I was a princess. My people believed my face carried too much light too. Much power. They said it caused madness in weak minds. So they sealed it behind silence. Jack blinked. So you wore the mask for them? She nodded. To keep their fears at peace. But in time, I forgot what peace felt like. Jack sat up. His strength was returning fast, much faster than doctors expected. Zeri's touch had done more than heal. Something inside him had awakened. A connection. They lied to you, Jack said softly. Your face isn't dangerous. It's beautiful. Zeri looked away, but her cheeks glowed softly, her kind's version of a blush. For someone so feared and so powerful, it was the first time she looked vulnerable. The doors suddenly opened. An alien figure in royal armor entered the room. Everyone bowed, even Zeri. Jack stood still. It was an envoy from the Queen's court. The Queen demands your presence. The envoy said coldly to Zeri. You have broken the royal vow. Zeri stood without fear. I will go. But I will not wear the mask again. The envoy's eyes narrowed. Then be ready to face the trial of truth. Zeri turned to Jack. Come with me. Jack's eyes widened. They want to punish you. Why bring me? She walked closer and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Because I need someone who saw the truth and didn't look away. The guards looked unsure. A human had never been allowed into the Queen's Hall, but Zeri had spoken as royalty and her words still held power. As they left the chamber, whispers followed them. The masked healer walks uncovered, and the human walks with her. Zeri knew what was coming. Trials, questions, judgment, maybe even exile. But she wasn't afraid anymore, because someone had looked into her soul and stayed. And Jack? He didn't understand much about alien politics or sacred rules. But he knew one thing for sure. He had touched something rare, something real. And now, he would follow it to the end, even if that meant standing before a queen. Even if that meant standing alone. The Queen's orders. The path to the Queen's court was lined with silence. Zeri walked beside Jack, her silver glowing face held high, uncovered for all to see. Soldiers on both sides lowered their gaze as she passed, some out of respect, others out of fear. None dared speak. Jack had seen battlefields before. He had stood before generals and threats. But this silence, this deep, heavy silence, felt different. He wasn't just walking into a courtroom. He was stepping into a war of traditions. And all eyes were on him, the human who had touched. The untouchable dot inside the grand chamber, the alien queen sat on her throne of crystal and light. Her eyes, bright like burning stars, watched Zeri closely. She was tall, her features sharp, almost cruel in beauty. Around her stood members of the High Council, each one cloaked in sacred symbols and ancient armor. "You removed your mask," the queen said at last. Her voice echoed like thunder in still water. "And you let a human see your face." Zeri did not kneel. "Yes, I did." The queen narrowed her eyes. "Do you deny what that means?" "I do not deny it," Zeri answered. "But I question." "Why, it must mean shame," the room murmured. No one had dared question the sacred codes in centuries. Jack kept his gaze steady. He didn't fully understand the customs, but he understood injustice. And this felt wrong. The queen pointed at him. "You, human, what do you think gives you the right to place hands on a healer, to violate her sacred veil?" Jack didn't flinch. "I didn't do it to insult her. I did it because she saved me. Because I wanted to see the one who gave me life when others gave up." Silence again. Then one elder counselor stepped forward. His voice was low, cautious. "The mask is not only tradition. It is protection. Her face has power, influence. We fear that power falling into the wrong hands." Jack replied, "Then maybe you're afraid of the wrong hands, not her face." The queen rose from her throne. "Zeri," she said, "if you truly believe in this human's words, then let him take the trial of loyalty. If he passes, your bond will be honored. If he fails, he will be erased." The air tightened. Zeri stepped forward. "He is not of our kind. He cannot pass your trials." The queen smiled coldly, "Then let him fail." Jack looked at Zeri. "What trial?" She turned to him, eyes heavy. "They will test your heart, your pain, your mind, and your loyalty. They will push you to the edge." Jack smiled, only slightly. "Then I hope they're ready to meet a stubborn human." Zeri's eyes widened. She wasn't sure if she should be proud or terrified. The queen's voice rang again. "The trial begins at dawn. If he survives, he will not only be accepted, but honored as your chosen one. And if not?" Jack asked. "Then you will die," the queen said. "And her face will be hidden once more, forever." Jack took a breath. "Then I guess I better win." As he left the court, the council whispered, a human had never been tested. A human had never been allowed to bond with a royal, but rules were already breaking, and the trial of loyalty was about to begin. Asterisk enemies among us the moment Jack agreed to face the trial of loyalty. Not everyone waited for the sun to rise. In the shadows of the great station, hidden away from the queen's eyes, voices whispered. Angry voices. Afraid voices. The old guards of tradition, the circle of purity, had waited years to remove Zeri from power. To them, her bare face was not a symbol of bravery. It was a violation. And now, the final insult had arrived. A human, daring to bond with their sacred bloodline. He cannot be allowed to pass. One of them growled. "He must not reach the trial alive," said another. And so, they plotted. Meanwhile, Zeri sat in silence, alone in the healing chambers. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from memory. She remembered the first time she was told her face was a danger. She was only a child then. Her light had glowed too brightly, and those around her had gone mad with visions. Or so they claimed, since. Then she had healed thousands, yet never once felt truly alive, until Jack. He didn't flinch when he saw her. He didn't stare like she was cursed. He saw a person, not a danger, and now he would risk death for her. That thought brought pain, and something else. Hope. Jack, however, was being followed. As he returned to the chambers to prepare for the trial, his path was strangely quiet. No guards, no voices, just footsteps echoing too close behind. He turned a corner and a blade slashed the air. He ducked, rolled, and barely avoided the sharp edge. A cloaked figure lunged again, but Jack grabbed a pipe from the wall and blocked the attack. He wasn't a trained fighter, not like them, but humans fought dirty when needed. A second attacker appeared, 2 against 1. Jack fought hard, using instinct more than skill. He took a deep cut to his arm, but he stayed on his feet. Just as he began to stumble, backlight exploded around him. Zeri had arrived. She didn't speak. She didn't scream. She simply raised her hand, and the attackers collapsed, their bodies frozen mid-motion. Her glowing scars flared brighter than ever before. "You dare touch him before the trial?" she said coldly. One of the attackers gasped. "He'll destroy everything. Your bond will break our laws." Zeri stepped closer. "Then maybe the laws are already broken." The Queen's guards arrived too late. They found 2 wounded assassins and 1 bleeding human still standing. "Patch him up," Zeri ordered. "I'm fine," Jack muttered, trying to hide the pain. "No," she whispered, gently placing her glowing hand over his wound. "Not now. Not when we are this close." The Queen was told what happened. She said nothing. But inside she knew this trial wasn't just about loyalty anymore. It was about revolution. Her people were dividing. And Zeri, once silent and obedient, had become a symbol of change. At sunrise, the trial grounds opened. Jack stood at the edge of a glowing platform high above the station's surface, with fire pits burning in a circle. In the center, ancient crystals floated in the air, pulsing with strange energy. Zeri stood behind the Queen, her face uncovered, her eyes locked on Jack. The Queen raised her hand. "The trial begins now. Let the truth of your soul decide your worth." Jack took a deep breath, stepped forward, and the platform lit beneath his feet. But deep in the crowd, the circle of purity watched closely. They had failed once. They would not fail again. Blood and light. Jack stepped into the trial ring, but this was no battlefield. There were no weapons, no enemies in sight. Just strange symbols glowing beneath his feet, ancient crystals circling in the air, and the heavy silence of hundreds watching him from every level of the court. This trial wasn't meant to test muscle. It was designed to break minds. As soon as Jack crossed the central ring, pain struck him, not from outside, but inside. Memories crashed through him. The explosion that nearly killed him, the face of a friend he couldn't save, the long silence of space. All twisted, amplified, stretched into guilt. He dropped to one knee, gasping. I felt it instantly. The energy of the trial fed on fear, on regret. It wasn't fair. This was never designed for a human. But Jack had no way out. If she interfered, he would fail. If she stayed silent, he might die. Jack lifted his head slowly. He was shaking, but he was still moving. The second phase began. Visions of betrayal. He saw Zeri turning from him, saw her masked again, laughing at his pain. He heard whispers. "She never loved you. She used you. You're just a human." Unworthy. But deep in his chest, something burned hotter than fear. He stood tall. "That's not her," he said aloud. "She saved me. She stood by me." "You can lie to my eyes, but not my heart." The circle of crystals cracked, shocked by his resistance. Gasps echoed across the court. The Queen leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "He resists the illusions," she whispered, "even without training." Zeri took a small step forward. Her glowing fingers twitched. Then came the third phase, the mirror of pain. A solid wall of energy rose before Jack. On it, he saw himself bloody, broken, screaming. He saw Earth burning, friends falling, her face disappearing. Then the wall split open, and a wave of mental force hit him like thunder. His nose bled. His legs buckled. Zeri's heart twisted. The crowd began to murmur, "He's done." But Jack stood again. He wiped the blood from his face. His fists were clenched. "I didn't come here to be perfect," he growled. "I came here for her. I came because she let me see her when no one else would. And I won't walk away now, not even if it kills me." The Queen's guards raised their weapons suddenly. Light was building fast. The crystals began to shake. Something was wrong. Zeri could no longer stay still. She ran forward and stepped into the trial ring. "No!" shouted a council elder. "You'll break the seal." But it was too late. Zeri placed her glowing hands on Jack's chest. His pain stopped. The energy around him froze. Then something no one expected happened. His body began to glow, not with fire, not with fury, but with her light. The same royal marks that glowed on her face began to faintly shimmer beneath Jack's skin. The Queen rose from her throne. "This cannot be," she said. "Only a royal bond, only a sacred match." Zeri's voice rang out, calm but unshakable. "He passed every test. He did not break. And now he carries my mark." The trial circle dimmed. The crystals fell. The platform cooled. And Jack collapsed, safe, breathing, glowing softly. The Queen stared at him, then at Zeri, then turned to the court. "Let it be known," she said slowly, "that the human did not fail, he did not break. He stood before the trial, bled for it, and carried it. He is now bound." Zeri knelt beside him, her face close to his. "You stayed," she whispered. He gave her a tired smile. "Told you I would." And in that moment, where blood met light and fear met love, history changed. Forever. Asterisk. The price of touch. Jack slept for 2 full rotations of the station's twin moons. His body healed, but not like before. This time, the light inside him pulsed with every heartbeat. Zeri's light. Her mark now lived within him, and the ancient bond they formed during the trial could never be undone. When he finally opened his eyes, Zeri was sitting beside him, her face calm but unreadable. Jack smiled weakly. "Did we win?" She didn't smile back. Instead, she placed a hand gently over his chest. "You survived the trial, Jack, but there's something you need to know. What you carry now, it wasn't just a mark. It was a transfer." Jack frowned. "Transfer?" Zeri looked away, pain flickering in her eyes. "My gift. The healing energy passed down through my bloodline. It was never meant to last forever. Every time I heal, it takes a part of me. When I gave it to you during the trial, I didn't just share it. I gave it all." Jack sat up slowly. "You mean? You don't have it anymore?" She nodded. "It's yours now." The silence between them grew heavier than any blade. Jack wasn't sure what to say. He had come here to thank her, to protect her, but she had sacrificed everything for him. "Why would you do that?" he finally asked. Zeri looked into his eyes, and this time her voice shook. "Because I knew what it meant to be seen. To be touched, not with fear, but with kindness. No one ever gave me that. You did. And for the first time in my life, I felt free." Jack looked down at his hands. "But I didn't want to take this from you. I didn't want to be the end of your gift." "You're not the end," she said. "You're the beginning of something new. But there's more." She reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out an ancient crystal, dim and cracked. "This was the heart of the healing order. It responded to me. But now it's chosen you." The crystal floated toward Jack and gently settled into his hand. The moment it touched his skin, it glowed brighter than ever before. Suddenly, visions flooded his mind. He saw hundreds of faces wounded, dying, hopeless. He felt their pain, their longing. And with it, a question echoed inside him. Will you carry what she no longer can? Jack clenched the crystal tightly. I don't know how to be what she was. Zeri gave a soft smile at last. You don't have to be me. Just be you and be kind. That's all healing ever needed. But as the light calmed, something dark crept through the station's outer scanners. The Queen's Court was not the only one watching. Far across the galaxy, ancient enemies of Zeri's bloodline had felt the transfer of power. They had been waiting for her to weaken. Now that the gift was inside a vulnerable human, they would come to take it. Zeri felt the shift in energy and looked toward the stars. They're coming, she whispered. They know the light has moved. Jack looked at her. Then we fight. No, she said gently. You run. You protect the gift. You live. Jack stood now stronger, brighter. Not without you. Tears welled in her glowing eyes. I'm fading, Jack. What I gave you. It's my last breath already burning inside you. Jack reached for her hand, held it tightly. Then burn with me. One last time. And in that quiet moment, where love met sacrifice, they stood together, not as healer and patient, not as alien and human, but as one. The price had been paid. Now came the storm. Asterisk, her face. His future. The stars didn't twinkle that night. They burned. The enemy fleet emerged from deep space like a swarm of silent shadows. No warnings, no demands. Just dark ships, ancient and sharp, carrying one goal, to erase the last spark of Zeri's light. They had feared her for generations. But now that her gift had passed to a human, they saw weakness, an opening, a chance to finally end her line. Forever. Inside the healing chamber, Jack stood still, the glowing crystal clutched in his palm. It pulsed stronger now, brighter than ever before, like it sensed the danger coming. Beside him, Zeri leaned against the wall, pale and fading, yet her eyes were fierce. You can't fight them all, she said softly. Not with strength, not with weapons. Then how? Jack asked, his voice low. With the truth, she whispered. With what you carry now. The doors burst open. The Queen entered, followed by guards, advisors, and council elders. The entire court had gathered for one final moment. Even those who once doubted Zeri now stared at her with something close to respect. They're preparing. For war, the Queen said. We cannot stop them with force. But perhaps we can stop them with something else. Zeri nodded weakly. Then let the human speak. The Queen raised a brow. You trust his voice more than ours? Zeri didn't hesitate. I trust his heart. Moments later, Jack stood before the galactic broadcast beacon. The entire system could hear him, friends, enemies, strangers. He didn't wear armor. He didn't raise a weapon. He simply stepped forward and began to speak. My name is Jack. I'm human. And I carry the last breath of a woman your empires feared. He held up the crystal, now burning white-hot. But what she gave me wasn't power. It was pain. It was love. It was healing. It was sacrifice. He looked straight into the camera. If you come here to take this from me, you're not just fighting one human. You're fighting every life she ever saved, every soul she ever touched. You're not facing soldiers. You're facing stories. And then he said something no one expected. He reached into his chest pocket and pulled out Zeri's mask. He held it up for all the galaxy to see. This mask once hid the face of the bravest being I've ever met. But today, I return it to its place, not on her, but in history. Because no more will light be hidden, no more will truth wear chains. He dropped the mask. It shattered. And just like that, The enemy fleet paused. Not a single ship fired. In the command vessel of the approaching invaders. Their leader, one of the oldest warlords of the forgotten race, watched in silence. He saw Jack's eyes, he saw the glow. And for the first time, he did not see threat, he saw legacy. He gave the order, withdraw. Back on the station, Zeri collapsed into Jack's arms. Her skin was dim now, like the last ember of a dying fire. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he said, holding her close. "We did." Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Then my story ends with you." And in that quiet final breath, her light left her body and flowed completely into his. A week later, a memorial was held. Not for a healer lost, but for a healer who gave the galaxy a new beginning. Jack now walked the halls where she once stood. He didn't wear her mask. He didn't pretend to replace her. He simply carried her light and offered healing to all. When asked who he was, he would answer the same way every time. "I'm just the human who saw her face and never looked away." And so, her story lived on, forever bound in his.